Imagine that you went to a cemetery to visit the grave of a deceased loved one and suddenly discovered that the grave had disappeared. And later you find it in a completely different place. Incredible. Yet such cases have been known for several centuries. And to this day no one can explain why graves sometimes move from place to place. In the 15th century, the grave of a certain Stettenberg disappeared from the city cemetery in Linz, Austria. Later it was found in another part of the cemetery. The townspeople decided that the unfortunate Stettenberg had practiced black magic during his lifetime, and therefore his remains could not find rest. The grave was opened, the remains were taken out of the coffin and solemnly burned in front of a crowd. The pit with the ashes was filled with stones, and an aspen cross was placed on the grave. That is how people treated the dead who were suspected of witchcraft in those days. In the autumn of 1928, many newspapers reported a strange incident involving the grave of Sir Roger Haslam, who had been buried in the cemetery of the Scottish town of Glenisville in the middle of the 19th century. Sir Arthur Haslam, the great-nephew of Sir Roger, happened to be passing through Glenisville and decided to visit his relative's grave. Several years earlier he had already visited his uncle's grave and knew perfectly well where it was located. He also remembered the neighboring tombstone with an angel carved on it. The nephew quickly found the spot by the fence and discovered the familiar tombstone with the angel. But where was the grave? Instead of it he saw only a level patch of ground overgrown with grass. The cemetery caretaker helped him find the grave. It turned out to be 200 meters from the place where it was supposed to be, as indicated by the cemetery plan as well. There was no doubt, the same low earthen mound, the same granite monument in the shape of a Maltese cross. Sir Arthur thought that someone had moved the tombstone while the coffin itself had remained in its original place. He ordered the old burial site to be dug up, but no coffin was found there. Then they dug up the grave under the granite cross and discovered, at a depth of 1.5 meters, the remains of a rotten oak coffin and a skeleton in decayed rags. The family ring with the monogram undoubtedly belonged to Sir Roger. The bones of the deceased were tightly grown into the clay, and in order to move the deceased to another place it would have been necessary to dig up a large fragment of soil. Who would need to do such painstaking work, and why? Another case occurred relatively recently, at the end of 1989. Early one morning, an elderly farmer named Joe Burney from the settlement of Foley Creek in western Kansas, USA, discovered a burial mound with a cracked stone tombstone in the middle of his yard. Burney immediately called the police. Upon examining the grave it turned out that the inscription on the tombstone had been completely erased. In the pit under the slab lay a decayed coffin with human remains grown into the earth. To whom they belonged was never determined. The coffin with the bones was carefully removed from the pit, taken out into the steppe and reburied. How did the grave end up in the yard of a farm surrounded by a solid fence with locked gates? If we assume that the moving of burial sites is the work of unknown jokers or malicious people, then how did they manage to remain unnoticed? After all, such work requires a considerable expenditure of time and effort. There is also another explanation, a magical one. Allegedly, the flight of graves is the work of magicians and sorcerers, or even unknown dark entities. It is not for nothing that among native peoples there is a custom of pouring the juice of a magic tree over a grave or bordering it with a rim of shells so that it will not leave. On the islands of Tonga the dead are buried only in pairs, the soul of one of them will hold the other if it suddenly wants to change its place.